What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. I think it's safe to say that Generation 5 was a divisive one, with many people unsure of how to take this new spin on the Pokémon series. But of course many also loved the shakeup, especially as time goes on we seem to find more and more appreciation for Unova. And with the most new Pokémon introduced ever, we likewise find many Pokémon that are fan favorites, and others that remain weirdo outcasts. But I was surprised to see that yet again, we find that a majority of this roster is just one type at 53%. I did not expect this, but I was clearly underestimating how front-loaded the dex was with monotypes. So it's up to us to figure out what these Pokémon would be if they had to pick up a second type, without changing anything in their lore or design, that is, and of course we'll rate their likelihood as well. Even though Gen 5 is the only dex that doesn't begin with a grass-type starter, Victini already has two types, so we'll be starting with the Snivy line, and here I think we'll have to go with Dragon. I know, surprise surprise, but these botanical serpents have what it takes to live up to the Dragon moniker. They're scaly, can learn a ton of Dragon-type moves, and already think themselves above everybody else, so I would give these ones 2 stars apiece. Tepig comes next, and I definitely don't think it should follow with its fighting-type successors. It's far too cute for that, and we have enough fighting-type quadrupeds anyway. I want to say ground, but honestly it doesn't really fit, so I'd have to lean towards normal. But that being said, it really ought to just stay the way it is, so no stars on the self-cooking bacon. My favorite of the 3, Oshawott, is next with its evolutions, and for the adorable otter and the more combative middle stage, I do think that fighting would work best. These Pokémon are masters at using their Scalchop in battle, and can be very forceful about it. The final stage of Samurott is similarly strong, but I think I'll give it the Steel type. Even if you think that might be overselling the durability of its armor, you can't forget that it has literal swords as well. So I'll give the first 2 just 1 star, since we don't want to clash with the pigs, even though I'm not convinced that they should have fighting either, but I'll raise Samurott up to 2 stars. Then there's the regional rodent Patrat line, and here we're gonna go with the ground type. No, I'm kidding. I mean, it could happen, but I do think that the fighting type might work better here as well. It just seems that with their upright stance and their disconcerting glares, that they would be sufficiently scrappy in a brawl. So I'll give it 1.5 stars. Then there's the pure normal Lillipup line as well, and this time I think ground will be appropriate. I mean, with all that fur brushing up against the ground, it's gonna be collecting a lot of dust, so why not go ahead and use it? I'll give them 2 stars for this perfectly believable power-up. There's also Purloin and Liepard, and here I'm going to say normal again. Usually this type is looked at as a pseudo-punishment, but this time it does seem to fit with these fiendish felines, even though their primary characteristic is still their cunning nature, plus the combo isn't really that great, so I'll give it 1 star. Now we have the infamous elemental monkeys, and while there are many options, I think these 2 could all have the normal type added. They all seem to have the same base that then build off in different directions. Maybe even get a pure normal pre-evolution to link them all together? Probably not. And it was only in this generation that they added one of those combinations, and it would have been before the last one was added, making them all pretty unique. It might not make them any more popular, but it could work out, so I'll give them all 2 stars. Then we find the surprisingly predictable Munna, and while Fairy might be the first thought of some, I'm going to go with Ghost. These Pokemon get some Ghost-type moves, and it could actually make sense because these lumps of dream energy are also portrayed as being asleep almost all of their lives, essentially being in a functional coma, which is about the closest that you can get to being dead, so I'll say at least 1.5 stars. Next we have the awesome Blitzel line, and with these I'll recommend Dark. That might be a tad literal for some, but these amazing Pokemon do have a dark side. Plus, I don't really see them having anything else. But honestly, they don't need another type since they're cool enough already, so only 1 star for them. Then of course is the Roggenrola line, and these are pretty straight up rock-type Pokemon. The only other type I could even see fitting is ground. They are just big chunks of the earth come to life, so spending all that time in caves seems logical to be equal parts rock and ground. Not that those put together ever really help a Pokémon, so we'll just say 1 star. We then find Drillbur, and I don't think Steel would quite work like its evolution, so I'm gonna say normal. I think it'd be pretty cool to have a normal type turn into a Steel type. It would be quite the upgrade to boast about, and it wouldn't be that big of a detriment either, so I'll give this cute little mole 2 stars. Then there's Audino, and I think most people will lean towards Fairy, which does make sense. That is the Mega typing after all. I know that Fairy wasn't around back when they made this Pokémon, but if any of them should have been retroactively made into a magical sprite, I think it's this one, so 3 stars. Now, I'm not a huge fan of fighting Pokémon, this next line included, but I do think we're onto something great here. Timber, I'm going to give the Grass type. It seemed appropriate given its name and weapon of choice. This leads me to give Girder the Steel type for the exact same reasons. And then of course Conkeldurr would be part Rock type. You might think that it's a downgrade going from Steel to Rock because, honestly, it probably is, but take that up with the design team because that's how it is regardless of additional types. But I don't think there's ever been a Pokémon line where each stage had their own unique typing separate from all of the others. So it may be out there, but that distinction alone makes me want to give them all 2.5 stars. Then there's the mild-mannered Tympole, left all alone outside of its wart-covered later stages. Although I don't think ground would fit here nearly as well, so I'm actually going to use poison. There are several toxic breeds of frogs, and this little tadpole can learn a surprising amount of poison moves. But honestly, he's more of a sound guy anyway, so we'll just give it half a star. Again, we have more fighting types with the Sock and Throw duo. Now, we could do something neat like make them fire and ice or something, but there's nothing about them to even hint at that, so honestly the best thing for them seems to be the Rock type. They're already jagged and misshapen, plus their movesets are littered with rock moves, so I've surprisingly convinced myself and will offer these two a good 1.5 stars. Then we come down to the Petilil line, and its counterpart was given the Fairy type. So if Petilil was going to make that cut, I feel like it would have once Gen 6 rolled around too. Plus there's not even a single fairy move in their arsenal. So instead, I would give them the Psychic type. Lilligant has a number of psychic tricks that could make it believable as an extrasensory cleric. Maybe not as strong as its whimsical counterpart, but I think it's good enough for 2 stars. Basculin comes next, and while some people do like it, most find it superfluous or downright forgettable. So, how do we fix that? I would say by adding the Dark type. These fish have a ferocious streak as strong as the colors along their sides, and they would definitely shred you apart with those gnarly teeth. So giving these Pokémon anything to stand out would be most welcome, and I'll give it 3 stars. Then there's Darumaka, and this little ball of energy I think would be given the Psychic type. Obviously, this is a link to its evolution's Zen mode. However, for Darmanitan, I would not do the same. This violent fire monkey should be given the Fighting type. I mean, just look at those arms, and it would make a nice pairing with the Zen mode already. So I'll probably give Darumaka maybe 1 star, but Darmanitan will get 3. We next find the overlooked cactus Pokemon, Maractus, and we've got some options, but I think we'll go with the Water type. Cactuses hold and trap a bunch of water already, not to mention it gets the Water Absorb ability. So giving this poor thing any leg up would be much appreciated, and I'll give it 2 stars. Then there's the Yamask line, and here I would give the Ground type. Now hold on, I know that they have regional variants that are this typing, but I've thought of this long before Sword and Shield came out. Not to be a conspiracy theorist, but I did make my own fake sarcophagus Pokemon that was going to be a ghost and ground type, that is until they stole it from me, but these ghosts are also in the mineral egg group, meaning it's got to have some sort of matter to it. So I'll give these 2 stars, which would have been even more if not for the Galarian counterparts. Next is one of the most infamous Pokemon from Unova with the Living Trash, and here I will opt for the Steel type. Much of our garbage has metal in it, and we can even see as much on Garbodor, so I'm willing to bet that a good portion of their interior makeup is in fact discarded metal. Not to mention, Poison and Steel is a fantastic combination that still doesn't exist, so I'll give it 3 stars for that. Right after that, we find the mysterious Zoroark family. So what do you do with Magic Trick Foxes? Normal is probably likely, but I think I'll go with Psychic. It is the de facto type for illusions, which just so happens to be this Pokemon's specialty. So it could fit here, but they are pretty solid as pure dark types, so we'll just put it at half a star. There's also the Minccino line, and I don't think it's too far out there to pair it with the fairy typing. These things are basically normal versions of Pikachu clones, and they're all cuddly and adorable, plus it gets a lot more fairy type moves once that actually exists, so I think that this could get up to 2.5 stars. Next is a big train of psychic types with 2 3-stage lines, starting with the Gothitelle family. And here I would add the dark type. After all, they are a bunch of goths, so I'm pretty sure they wouldn't mind the edge. As for the Reuniclus crop, I think I'm going to go with Bug. They are an incredibly weird choice for a Pokemon, essentially being single-celled organisms, like a virus to infect you, a bug, if you will. So I think I'll give the Goths 2 stars, and then maybe just 1 star for the gelatinous blobs. Then we have the living ice cream cones, and it's kind of hard to see them as anything other than ice types. I was thinking maybe rock for some rocky road, but that doesn't really pan out. Maybe just as a regional variant? I'm inclined to say steel. It does learn several steel-type moves after all, and who's to say that the dishes aren't made of metal? But truthfully, we do still need some pure ice types out there, so no stars on this one. Next we come down to Carablast, who I will give the dark type. I'm gonna give it 3 stars, but I'll explain a bit more later. Alomomola is next, and good grief, why in the world isn't this a fairy type? Even more so than Luvdisc, this Pokemon has descriptions of being loving and caring for other wounded Pokemon, so fairy type gets a good 3 stars from me. We then find the Clink line, and honestly, the only thing that could possibly work here is the electric type. Gears made out of pure metal are only fit to be used in machinery, so giving them electrical powers would be in line, especially since that's about the only kind of coverage these cogs can get. Plus, it's a pretty great combo, so I'll give it 2.5 stars. Then there's the Electric-type Eelektross line. Starting with Tynamo, I think we could once again see the Bug-type pop up. It might be unconventional to some, but this thing is basically a little larva, and it has almost no other qualities to distinguish itself, so why not? As for the other two, I'm thinking Poison could work. I was shocked to see how many Poison moves are in their level up moveset, and it's a great combination that would still have its quad weakness negated by the Levitate ability. So I'll give Tynamo maybe just half a star, but the others will get 2. The Outer Space Aliens are next, and I think the best course here might be the Flying type. After all, they are associated with UFOs, and these Pokemon are almost always shown to be floating or just freely moving through the air. There might be plenty of Psychic Flying types in this region already, but these Extraterrestrials should get at least 1 star. Now we find one of the more famous Pokemon from Unova, the Axew line, as a single Dragon type. So for the first stage, I'm thinking maybe the Ground type, as it dwells primarily in caves and other dry areas. That's not super crucial, but for its evolutions, I would recommend Steel. They do have razor-sharp weapons on their face after all, not to mention the armor to boot. Making them Dragon and Steel type would more than make up for the fact that they aren't officially the pseudo-legendaries of the region. So I'll give Axew 1 star, but the others will probably get 3. Next is the Cubchoo family, and they do pull off pure ice with style, so what else can we give them? Well, probably just normal, but that's better than it sounds, because we still don't have a normal and ice-type Pokemon. So for that breakthrough, I think it should get at least 1 star. Cryogonal might be underwhelming to me, and many others, but if we gave it the Steel type, that might change. Its serrated crystalline structure and steely blue color make it look like it was created out of metal already, and buffing it up can't hurt, so let's give it 3 stars. Okay, now we have Shelmet and Excelgor, and it's time to bring back Carablast. As we know, these Pokemon have one of the most unique relationships in this universe. So I think giving Shelmet the Steel type would make perfect sense, and Excelgor being a Dark type is perfect too, for it basically being a ninja. So if these Pokemon were given these types, and in fact swapped types upon evolving, it would only serve to increase their connection, so they will get 3 stars as well. The last of our solo fighting types have arrived, and I think perhaps the flying type could fit. Really more for the second one. I guess Mienfoo could at least glide on those massive arms, but Mienshao learns flying type moves and is a supremely graceful Pokemon, easily belonging on aerial silks or a trapeze of some kind. So on the first one I'll say, meh, no stars, but the second one is worth at least 1.5. The disappointing Druddigon is next, and while flying might be tempting with those giant wings, I'm gonna go with Rock. I mean, it's basically got a bunch of stalagmites popping out of it everywhere, and it's also found to live in cave-type areas. Put that together with the rock-type moves that it gets already, and I'll say it's worth 2 stars to get the combination before next-gen's fossils. Then there's the ever-stylish Bouffalant, and this beauteous bovine should probably get the fighting type. This thing is ridiculously buff with powerful fighting moves, as well as the reckless ability. So if I had to give it something, I would say the enhanced combat is worth 1 star. Up next is Heatmor. Boy, there's a lot of under-the-radar Unova Pokemon, but its rival Durant already has 2 types. So what else can this fire anteater have? I'm going to say Ground. It can live under the earth, it's even said to breathe through its tail like a snorkel. And even if Ground is neutral against Durant, it does seem like it might help to have another tool against it. And it would certainly help to make this Pokemon stand out a little bit more, so I'll give it 3 stars. And surprisingly, every single legendary Pokemon in Unova is dual-typed, save one. That of course being the first pure flying type ever in Tornadus. The other forces of nature got dual types, so what about this one? I'm thinking Dark, since he does look pretty evil, and the ominous clouds still fall in line with the whole flying motif. However, I'll go ahead and say that this is a big no for me, since we need to hold on to every pure flying type that we can. So, those are all of the dual typings that I would assign the Pokemon from the Unova region. It was a bit more than I expected, and it was interesting to see that out of all of them, this time Dark and Normal seemed to be the most prominent. Each region truly has its own unique flavor. What do you think of the dual types of Unova? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!